Welcome to Astrid's Tales. Here's today's story. I spent 6 months calling my best friend a homewrecker and a liar because she told me my husband was cheating on me. I chose him over her. I blocked her number, banned her from our house, and told her I never wanted to see her face again. Today, I found the keys to my husband's secret apartment tucked inside his gym bag. I drove there, ready to find a stranger. But when I walked into the lobby and looked at the resident directory, the bachelor pad wasn't under his name. It was under hers. Am I the asshole for realizing my best friend wasn't trying to save my marriage, she was trying to win the competition? The three of us, me, Chloe, and David, were a modern urban legend. The kind of inseparable trio that people either envied or found deeply suspicious. Our bond was forged in the disparate crucibles of our lives. I met Chloe during the chaotic freedom of college. Two young women navigating the wilds of art history lectures and cheap beer. Our friendship was immediate and absolute. She was the sharp, pragmatic edge to my softer, more romantic nature. When I married David, she was my maid of honor. Her presence at my side is non-negotiable as my own. I met David 6 years ago at a sterile gallery opening. An event I attended out of obligation and he out of professional curiosity. In a room of self-important artists and their patrons, he felt like a bolt of lightning. He was a successful architect, tall and disarmingly charming, with an uncanny ability to make you feel like you were the only person in a crowded room. Our connection was instant, a palpable current that rendered everyone else a muted backdrop. For years, the three of us functioned as a single, cohesive unit. People often joked that Chloe and David behaved more like siblings than friends. Their dynamic was a whirlwind of witty bickering, inside jokes, and an unnerving synchronous rhythm. He would tease her about her aggressive driving. She would mock his taste in modernist furniture. I found it endearing. It was the perfect ecosystem, a husband I adored and a best friend who got along with him seamlessly. There was no jealousy, no girl drama, no competition for my time. I believed I was the luckiest woman in the world, blissfully unaware that the foundation of my world was a carefully constructed lie. The persona Chloe played for a decade, the fiercely protective best friend, was just that, a performance. And I was her most captivated audience. The first hairline crack in the facade appeared 6 months ago on a Tuesday. We were having drinks at my place. The city lights of downtown glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the apartment David and I shared. David was at the office late for the 3rd time that week, a recent pattern I had dismissed as the demands of a new, high-profile project. Chloe leaned forward on the sofa, her wine glass untouched. Her eyes were red-rimmed as if she'd been crying, her usual sharp demeanor softened by a troubling vulnerability. "Jess," she began, her voice low and strained. "I can't keep this in anymore. I have to tell you something and I need you to just listen." I felt a prickle of unease. Chloe was not prone to melodrama. "It's David," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "He's seeing someone. I saw him at a restaurant in the city, one of those dark, expensive places on the waterfront. He was with a woman. And they were close, holding hands across the table." I laughed. It was a knee-jerk reaction, a shield against the absurdity of her claim. "Chloe, you must be mistaken," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "David is a social guy. He has female clients, investors. You know that." "It was probably a business dinner." "It wasn't a business dinner," she insisted, her gaze intense. "I know what I saw. The way he was looking at her. It was the way he looks at you." Her words hung in the air, ugly and invasive. I refused to let them land. My trust in David was a fortress, its walls built over years of perceived devotion. Chloe's accusation was a stone thrown against granite. Over the next few weeks, she kept throwing them. Every time we met, she presented a new piece of evidence. A receipt she'd supposedly spotted in his car for a jewelry store I didn't recognize. The faint, unfamiliar scent of perfume on a scarf he'd left on the hall table. A feeling she had, a gut instinct she couldn't shake till her warnings became more frequent, more desperate. She was chipping away at my reality, and I resented her for it. I began to see her concern not as friendship but as an attack. Why was she so determined to destroy my happiness? Was she jealous of my stable, loving marriage? Was her own chaotic dating life making her bitter? Or worse, did she want David for herself? The confrontation came a month later. She cornered me after a yoga class, her face pale and set. "Jess, this is an ultimatum," she said, her voice trembling with what I mistook for righteous anger. "If you don't leave him, if you refuse to see the truth, then I can't stand by and watch you be a victim anymore." It's him or me. A cold fury washed over me. The choice was insulting. She was asking me to choose between my husband, the man I had built a life with, and her increasingly unhinged suspicions. "Get out," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Get out of my life, Chloe. I don't know what your game is, but I'm not playing." I went home and called David, my voice breaking with sobs as I recounted the conversation. He rushed home from the office, his face a mask of concern and righteous indignation. He held me as I cried, stroking my hair and whispering soothing words. "She's clearly unstable, Jess," he said, his voice laced with a perfect blend of pity and anger. "She's always been a little obsessed with our relationship. This is what happens when people are unhappy in their own lives. They try to tear down others. We're better off without that kind of toxicity." I believed him. I clung to his every word. He was my rock, my partner, my defender. Chloe was the traitor, the serpent in our domestic Eden. That night, I blocked her number. I deleted her from my social media. I packed a box with every photo, every gift, every remnant of our decade-long friendship and shoved it into the back of a closet. I performed a complete and total amputation. Chloe Vance, my sister in all but blood, ceased to exist. Severing ties with Chloe was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The phantom limb of our friendship ached constantly. There were moments I'd reach for my phone to text her a funny observation or a piece of good news, only to remember the digital wall I had erected between us. But David, my loving, devoted husband, made the process easier. He filled the void she left with a relentless campaign of affection. He whisked me away on a surprise trip to Paris, a whirlwind of museums and candlelit dinners. He bought me a Cartier bracelet, just because. His attention became all-consuming, as if he were determined to prove that his love was more than enough to sustain me. I leaned into it, desperate to validate my choice. I was living a romance novel, and it was my reward for excising the toxic element from my life. In the midst of this renewed honeymoon phase, David's work life became even more demanding. He had taken on a massive new project, designing a luxury apartment complex in a trendy, up-and-coming part of the city. He explained that he needed to be on-site constantly, overseeing every detail. The commute was nearly 2 hours each way, so he would often need to stay overnight at a nearby hotel to be on-site for early morning inspections. "It's a huge opportunity for the firm, Jess," he'd explained over one of our lavish dinners. "If I land this, it sets us up for life." I didn't question it. I couldn't. Questioning him would mean admitting that a sliver of Chloe's poison had seeped into my veins. I had to believe him completely, without reservation. I had to prove her wrong, not just to the world, but to the nagging subconscious whisper in my own mind. So I became the perfect wife. I packed his overnight bag. I never complained about the late nights or the last-minute changes of plan. I never checked his phone. I smiled, I supported him, and I told everyone how proud I was of my brilliant, hardworking husband. My marriage was perfect. My best friend was a traitor. This was the gospel I preached to myself every single day. The sermon ended. Yesterday. David left early in the morning for one of his on-site stays. He kissed me goodbye, his lips still tasting of coffee, and promised to call before he went to bed. A few hours later, I was cleaning out the mudroom, an overdue task I'd been putting off for weeks. I went to move his gym bag, which he had forgotten in his haste to leave. As I lifted it, I felt something heavy and hard at the bottom, beneath his running shoes and a damp towel. Curious, I unzipped the bottom compartment. Inside was a spare set of keys attached to a sleek black leather fob. Stamped into the leather in silver lettering was an address, 142 Bluebell Lane. Apt 4B. My heart didn't just stop. It seized. Bluebell Lane was not in some nondescript suburb near a construction site. It was one of the most exclusive, expensive streets in the city, known for its boutique luxury buildings and celebrity residence. We didn't own any property there. My mind scrambled for a logical explanation. It had to be work-related. Maybe it was a model unit for the new apartment complex. A temporary office? It had to be. But the mask of the perfect wife, so carefully maintained for 6 months, finally cracked. I didn't call him. I didn't send a text with a photo of the keys, demanding an explanation. The part of me that had once turned to him for comfort and clarity was gone, replaced by a cold, silent dread. I grabbed my purse, got into my car, and drove. The entire 40-minute drive to Bluebell Lane was a frantic internal monologue. I'm going to go there, see a half-finished construction site, see a corporate logo on the door, and then I'm going to go home and feel like a complete idiot for ever doubting him. I repeated it like a mantra, a prayer against the truth I felt closing in around me. The building at 142 Bluebell Lane was not a construction site. It was a finished, gleaming tower of glass and steel, a masterpiece of modern architecture. A discreet, uniformed doorman stood at the entrance. This was not a project site. This was a home. My hands trembled as I pushed open the heavy glass door. I walked into the lobby, a cavernous space of marble floors, modern art, and the scent of expensive floral arrangements. A concierge sat behind a polished granite desk, his smile polite and professional. Can I help you? He asked. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I'm here to drop something off at apartment 4B, I managed to say, my voice sounding thin and foreign to my own ears. I held up the keys I had found. As I walked past the concierge desk toward the bank of elevators, I saw the digital resident directory, a sleek touchscreen glowing on the wall. My feet stopped of their own accord. My hand, trembling slightly, reached out and scrolled down the list of residents. EA, EB, RA. My finger traced the names. And then 4B. It didn't say David Miller. It said Chloe Vance. The world tilted on its axis. Time seemed to slow, the ambient sounds of the lobby fading into a dull, distant roar. Chloe. The name pulsed on the screen, a beacon of betrayal. The warning she had given me 6 months ago flashed through my mind, but the memory was now warped, twisted into something monstrous. David is seeing someone. She hadn't been warning me about a stranger. She had been talking about herself. She didn't tell me he was cheating. She told me he was cheating, a subtle but profound omission. She had tried to get me to leave him, not to save me from a broken heart, but so she wouldn't have to be the other woman anymore. She wanted me to do the dirty work of ending our marriage so she could step out of the shadows and into my life. The competition I had imagined between us was real, but I had been the only one who didn't know the rules of the game. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in the sterile, opulent lobby. Eventually, I took a shaky breath and walked into the elevator. I pressed the button for the 4th floor. The ascent was silent, smooth, and felt like a journey to my own execution. The door to apartment 4B was a dark, solid wood, identical to the others in the quiet, carpeted hallway. I lifted the key, my hand guided by a force that felt outside of myself. It slid into the lock and turned with a sickening, silent click. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. I didn't find a sterile bachelor pad or a woman's apartment I didn't recognize. I found a home. I found our home remixed and re-edited. The air smelled of my favorite Diptyque candle, the one David always claimed gave him a headache. A throw blanket I recognized from our living room sofa was artfully draped over a chair. And on the mantel, above a sleek modern fireplace, was a silver-framed photograph. It was a picture of Chloe and David, their arms around each other, grinning at the camera. The photo had been taken on a weekend when I was away visiting my mother. They didn't hear me come in. They were sitting on a large, comfortable-looking sofa, their heads bent together over a set of architectural blueprints spread out on the coffee table. They were designing a house.
Their house. Together. I didn't scream.
I didn't cry. The capacity for those emotions had been burned out of me in the lobby.
I simply lifted my phone and took a photo.
Then I switched to video mode and started recording. I cleared my throat. They both looked up.
Their faces a picture of cozy domestic bliss.
And then they saw me. David's face went slack with a terror so profound it was almost comical. Chloe's expression was a rapid, flickering montage of shock, then fear, then a cold, calculating anger. She had been outplayed. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment longer before I spoke, my voice calm and eerily steady. "Chloe," I said, my gaze fixed on her. "You were right. He is cheating." I paused, then shifted my eyes to my husband, the man who had been the center of my world.
"I just didn't realize you were the one providing the lease." The look on their faces, the raw,
unadulterated panic of two master manipulators caught in their own trap, will sustain me for the rest of my life. The excuses started immediately, a frantic, overlapping cascade of lies. Chloe tried to claim she was trapped, that he had manipulated her. David, ever the narcissist, tried to blame me, saying he only did it because I was being so cold and distant after the fight with Chloe. I didn't stay to listen.
I had everything I needed.
I walked out, closing the door softly behind me, leaving them in the ruins of the life they had tried to build on the foundations of mine. I'm currently in a hotel suite overlooking the city. My lawyer, a woman known for her merciless efficiency,
has the photos, the video, the audio recordings from that first night,
and a copy of the lease for apartment 4B. The lease Chloe signed using the business funds David had been funneling into her real estate accounts for over a year. A fact my lawyer uncovered with frightening speed.
I think back to Chloe's ultimatum. It's him or me.
I thought she was asking me to choose her over him. But she wasn't. She was telling me that in the end, only one of us could have him.
I was a competitor in a race I never even knew I was running.
I wish I had listened to her warning, not because it would have saved my marriage, but because it would have saved me 6 months of misdirected grief. But then again, if I had, I wouldn't have had the profound, terrible satisfaction of watching their faces as I unlocked the door to their secret life. They wanted to steal my future. Instead, I'm about to own theirs. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the story, click like and subscribe. Leave us a comment to tell us what you would have done in this situation.